You know, I speak at these conferences about every other week nowadays. So you can tell in what I'm going to talk about, it's completely different than what you just heard. We heard the economist, we heard the regulatory get up and start speaking. I get to tell you the fun stories. I get to tell you the craziness in the crypto world in the last couple of years. I got into this space accidentally. I'm an investment fraud lawyer. I used to work about 10 years down the street at Patton Boggs, one of the world's largest law firms in the country. I charged $700 an hour. I was not worth the dollar you paid me. I didn't know what I was doing. And when I was in Vegas last week, I was on the panel with a bunch of fancy 700 to now 12. Marco Santorini gets $1,200 an hour to give regulatory advice. And my advice to everyone in the room in Vegas last week, and I'm going to repeat it because I think it's true, no matter what you do, if you are paying $1,200 an hour for regulatory advice, get it from a big firm, but get a guarantee in writing that if you get indicted, they will represent you for free. Because trust me, they have no idea what they're talking about. And that is one of the most important things. The space is changing, everything's changing. We can talk about the law and what we're doing today, but I'm gonna run through my cases, because my cases illustrate the problem of adopting a new technology. How many people have ever heard of Trending Shavers? 1, 2, 3. We got 4 people, sorry, in the back. Trending Shavers is a genius. He was the first person to run a Ponzi scheme using Bitcoin. He would be one of the wealthiest men in the world today if he wasn't sitting in jail in New York. He got indicted, he got held, he was a Ponzi scheme. We can talk about whether the SEC got it right, whether it was a security, a commodity. I don't care. The guy's sitting in jail. But he at the time was supposedly running over 20% of the Bitcoins available through his Ponzi scheme in Texas. If he had simply held it, he'd be one of the wealthiest men in the world. Going back to Evgeny's chart, if you put $100 back in a day, he was doing this around 2011, he'd be worth a lot of money right now. So what we do, we turned around and we sued him. Now, I want to thank Susan, I want to thank Evgeny. They're talking about the Year of the Lawyer coming up. God, I hope so. This is all I do. But one of the issues we were talking about is not liability, it's collectability. And as I speak at all these conferences, everyone's at the conference for the same reason. They're trying to see how to extrapolate, taking their ICOs public, making money, and getting that money out of my way. They do not want to be sued. They don't want to be sued by the SEC. They don't want to be sued by the plaintiffs' lawyers. They want to make sure that their money is protected. That should tell you everything you need to know about the space where we are today. The cream will eventually rise to the crop. I don't want you to think I don't believe in the technology. I absolutely believe in the underlying technology. You cannot stop innovation. But the days of autonomous, anonymous are over. I don't care what anyone tells me. The point of government is to track assets. We can talk about how and what the SEC is doing, what the CFTC is doing, but the point is there are governments all over the world right now that are trying to determine how they can secure their government and how to keep autonomous, anonymous away from the monetary system. Now, again, that doesn't mean that the technology is going away. The technology is here to stay. Bitcoin Savings and Trust, federal court. We got a $12 million judgment. That present value is worth $100 million. If I can figure out how to collect it when Trending gets out of jail, trust me, I'm going to. I hope Trending cures cancer. I hope he's smart in other areas and he adopts something and makes a lot of money. Those were 4 investors in his Ponzi scheme that got the $12 million judgment. How I really got to be in the space and get my name out into the space was Cryptsy. How many people know of the Cryptsy exchange? Not many people. Oh, 1, 2, 3. We're only at 3. Cryptsy is Paul Vernon, and this is important. When Mt. Gox went down, a little guy with a mom and pop shop, because he was actually just him and his wife, in Delray Beach, Florida, started an exchange. They literally let any single coin onto the exchange. It turned out there was a reason why. Forget know your customer, forget AML laws. They didn't care. The whole thing was a Ponzi scheme. It was a complete ripoff. You got a screenshot. You were told this is where your assets were. It turns out that Paul Vernon was simply taking the money, any crypto would have sent to him, and he was putting it into Coinbase, and he was liquidating it out, and all you saw was a screenshot. It was actually pretty brilliant. Looked like an E-Trade account statement, a TD trade statement. So Cryptsy, the present value stolen, we're actually wrapping up this class action right now. Claimants who were approved by the court should be getting paid sometime in the first quarter 2018. Present value stolen is $98.4 million. Now this is important because now we're going to start talking about different exchanges. The number one question I get all the time is, where should I put my cryptos? What's the most legitimate exchange? Guys, I want to say this first. I am not a regulatory lawyer. I don't care about regulation. I'm going to sue you if you steal money and you steal my client's money. Early adopters have been blown out of this space. They have lost a significant amount of money that they put in. At the beginning of time, they all thought they should be rich, and they should be. They were there in the space in 2010, 11, 12. I have no idea who's a legitimate character in the space, but I can tell you who I'm suing nowadays. Let's go into Lidell v. Coinbase, class action. $8.2 million laundered by Coinbase in approximately 2014 and 15. Present value, $98.4 million. You'll notice that's the same number from Cryptsy, because this is born out of the Cryptsy case. What did the CEO of Cryptsy do? He took his $8.2 million and simply sent it through Coinbase in 2 different accounts. Let's ask, what type of know your customer and money laundering investigation did Coinbase do? Well, they asked Paul Vernon where he got his coins. He said, well, I have a business. It's Cryptsy. They said, great. They said, how much do you charge? He said, I charge 0.001 per transaction. They said, great. Now, when they didn't think, maybe say, wait, you're doing $1.2 trillion a year in business and you're operating an exchange no one's ever heard of? Maybe that should have triggered something. What else should have triggered something? Coinbase was paying him to a SunTrust bank account. They have over 100 different distributions to Paul Vernon and his company in excess of $5,000. That should have triggered an alarm. Some of them were in excess of $100,000. Coinbase today is very different than what Coinbase was back then. I am not here telling you that Coinbase is or is not complying with federal law. That's for Coinbase to tell you. I can tell you back then, if there is the SEC in the room, wherever you are, I don't know you, but you should really follow your SEC whistleblower, complaints. I may have filed a couple. And the CFTC, the same thing, because we are now suing several different places. But Coinbase is a great place to look. They just raised $100 million with a $1.2 billion valuation. That is exciting news for this space. They are legitimizing. And as everyone in this room tries to legitimize in this space, there are definitely ways to do things and ways not to. I am not the guy to tell you. That's the $1,000 an hour lawyer who you should get your indictment guarantee from. If they give you advice, you should be allowed to rely on it. I personally have a no fee, no recovery, no fee guarantee. I pay all of the money for the cases. I do not take money from victims who have already lost money. I spec the cases because I could believe in them. Let's talk about Kraken. Who has money at Kraken? Anybody? Anyone have any crypto at Kraken? There you go. We got 2 people. I got money. I got crypto at Kraken. Just because I sue companies, I have crypto at Coinbase. Just because I sue companies doesn't mean I don't believe in them. There are very limited places you can put your crypto. Kraken, May 7th, 2017. On May 7th, there was a purported flash crash at Kraken where the price of Ether dropped from $96 down to $25. They allow leverage transactions at Kraken. If you had a margin account, chances are your margin was blown out during this flash crash. Now, as we sit here today, we talk about the price of Bitcoin, $7,500. We say that Bitcoin is worth this and Bitcoin is worth that. Anyone who trades on an exchange in the US, whether it be Coinbase, Poloniex, Kraken, Bittrex, Gemini, these are actually self-sustaining, individualized models that determine their own price. They actually do not exist in a vacuum that's regulated by one. This is not buying a share of Apple stock, putting your Apple stock into your account at E-Trade, and no matter what, when you see the ticker go across the screen, you know exactly how much, on CNBC, you know exactly how much your Apple stock is worth. Why do we know that? Because on May 7th, 2017, my clients who have now lost over $17 million, these aren't fictitious numbers anymore. These are real dollars to real people, and these guys are pissed that they lost $17 million because the flash crash that was started at Kraken was a large order accepted by Kraken, which is in violation of their own policies and procedures because they should not take any order that indirectly or directly affects market price. They took it, they started a cascading effect. While under a DDoS attack, they had shut down their own marketplace, so you weren't allowed to log in and change any orders that were in your account. Other users weren't able to come in and buy crypto on Kraken on May 7th because they were under attack and shut down the marketplace. So what ended up happening was a cascading effect which caused all of the leveraged accounts to be sold out because the flash crash dropped to $25 while you weren't able to log into your account. So if you take an investor who had now invested back in 2015, 16, Ethereum, Ether was trading, I think, at $95 that day, somewhere around $300 today. Those people want to know where their money is. And now they're saying, well, I lost my money. Let's sue. I'm there. I love those people. Those are my clients. Now you go read the terms of service. Kraken's terms of service actually say Kraken can do anything in their own financial interest without public notice to you, the user. At any time, for any reason, they can change their rules and they can change any type of account they want. So they can ignore their own terms and conditions, which they did on this particular day. What happened when this happens about a month later at Coinbase? I am not suing Coinbase for the flash crash. Why? Coinbase turned around and said, we're not paying our customers back either. The very next day, it may be because there's a CFTC investigation going into Coinbase at the moment, Coinbase announces we're going to give everybody back their money because the flash crash should not have happened. There was a DDoS attack. There's a flash crash. It should not happen. The reason why Kraken is now being exposed is because whether or not you use a leverage program, when you're doing leverage legitimately, when the government does it at banks, there's an accounting system. There are backed assets. In theory, if I buy one share of Apple stock and I leverage it or I go on margin in my E-Trade account, that money is accounted for. The money is loaned to me from a separate account. I pay costs and fees. I am staring into a camera. I have no proof of this. I only believe what my clients tell me. People believe that there are no backed assets and there's no accounting for money when there's leverage done. For those people who are aware of the precious metal scams of the early 2000s, when people all over the country were buying gold, silver, and platinum in leveraged margins accounts, it turns out a lot of the largest sellers of those precious metals were not actually buying the underlying asset to protect the leverage or the margin. What effectively happened was you lose 50% of your money on the very first day of your investment in a precious metal scam. Here, it's kind of the same. They're charging you money for the leverage, the margin, and the interest, and the cost. They didn't have the underlying asset. Flash crash comes, whether it's an internal flash crash or not. Who makes all the money? Kraken makes all the money. That's Kraken. Now, we're here for ICOs. Let's talk about Tezos for a little bit. I've been the leader in the forefront. When I spoke in New York a couple of months ago, I made a proclamation that I was going to be the leader and the first one to sue ICOs and every single one of them. I have not done so yet. There's a reason for this. I am a contingency fee lawyer. I can only take cases that I believe are not only liability a slam dunk, but collectability a slam dunk. Tezos is going to be the first one of the ICOs. Why? The Delaware company changes everything. So, people got into Tezos. Were they profit-seeking investments or donations? I've spoken to over 1,000 different people who have put in money into Tezos. What have they told me? They all don't want to give up their right to future Tezos. They all believe they're still going to make so much money, they don't think that their money is at risk. I can't convince them otherwise. Personally, I have a belief that you're going to see the first class action was filed in California. You'll see a class action filed by my firm shortly in federal court. You'll see the difference in why I waited a little bit. The fact is, they can talk about whether or not it's a utility or security. There's nothing built right now. Ask your regulatory lawyers when we do the regulatory panels. Ask your other, what is the difference and whether or not that applies. But here are some big things I look at. Compensation to the Brightmans. Don't tell me it's a donation. $225 million, now worth $500 million. They're making $50 million in cash. None of my investors who signed up, by the way, none of them signed the terms or conditions. None of them signed anything. It was an autonomous, anonymous donation to the Tezos Foundation. We're going to talk about whether or not that's legitimate or not and what that does to the litigation down the road. But I can tell you, none of them believed they were donating money for, as Kathleen Brightman said, a tote bag, to pay them $50 million for the technology. So it's important as to, in the ICOs, what do the investors believe and what do the backers believe? Most people are raising money and doing it in different ways. So for the future of ICOs, again, I want to put this, it's in red. I am not a regulatory lawyer. I don't care about the regulatory laws. I only care about suing on behalf of investors who lost money. I'm going to follow the money. And the Tezos case is a perfect example of following the money. Who got paid? The Brightmans got paid. They're liquidating $10 million in cash right now a week. the backers got paid. Draper came out as one of the early backers and said two things. One, I am an investor. Two, he wrote the open letter to the SEC where he basically outlined his 3 points about what makes something a security. By his own, what his own definition should be of what a security is, he believes that Tezos was a security, not a utility. Two, substance over style. I go to these conferences every other week. I sat in Vegas at Money 2020 and Coin Agenda. And there were people just sitting on the dais telling everyone how they can make money selling and raising money through ICOs. I think when Vincent Molinari was speaking earlier, he was talking about how the investments are outpacing VC funding investments. I think that was on your chart. Here's the problem with that chart. You got to take Tezos out of that chart because that $225 million was a donation. People are legitimately confused as to what is and is not an investment, what's competing with VC funding. I can tell you of the 1,000 people I spoke to, they still don't want to give up that right to that investment. They are participating. It's not really a Ponzi scheme because the future, you're not being paid by future investors. The money's there. The technology, if it ever works. Personally, you want to ask what a red flag is? I get to say this into a camera. I think it's a little weird that they said Ernst & Young was a client of theirs and utilizing their technology. Reuters wrote one of the greatest articles I've ever seen for investigative reporting where the bad guy actually told the newspaper the truth. Reuters confirmed Ernst & Young not using their product. They confirmed the French tech company not using their product. At the end of the day, it's important to remember, and this is the third point, you are always being recorded. In this space, I am going to sue you. You are always being recorded. Everything you tell an investor, email, text, telephone, at these conferences. It doesn't matter, substance over style. No matter what you do, if you're trying to make money and you're trying to convince your investors who are donating that they're going to make money, it's going to be a security. And the SEC, on my 100 whistleblower complaints I'm going to file for every one of these that come out, they're going to come after everybody eventually. Why? Again, I work on contingency fee. If you pay Marco $1,200, get your in-writing guarantee that if you get indicted based on his advice, that you can turn around and get free legal services for your criminal case. Any questions?
No, we don't have time for questions. You've got to be in a panel.
I'm going to be in a panel.
Yes, sir. And thanks for endorsement.